Hey, what's up? My name is Galactor, and in this video I want to show you my new patcher preset called ChopIt, which can turn any vocal into a screech sound. So without further ado, let's have a listen what I made with it.
The sun will appear from behind the clouds. The night will fall when the stars are out. The skies will clear and I'll dry my tears. The rain will fall and I'll still be here. Take me to paradise, where there is a beautiful sunrise. And now I realize that I control my own life. Take me to paradise, show me the blue skies. I wanna feel alive. Take me to paradise. Take me to paradise. Take me to Take me to paradise.
This is the sound that I made with ChopIt. And just a quick note, this sound is solely made, or pretty much solely made with ChopIt, because on the mixer channel there's only a slight equalization and a limiter. So let's start at the beginning and I'll show you what steps you have to take to get a sound like this. So as soon as you load up ChopIt into FL Studio, this is what you're gonna see. And this is pretty much the main interface where, as the title says, you have control over the sample, an LFO, filter, and extra resonance. And just as a quick guide, after this, you have control over 3 different types of distortion, then multiband compression, the option to sidechain your signal, add effects, so delay and reverb, and also the option to sidechain these 2 effects separately, and a master channel. Now there is a catch to this, because ChopIt is a patcher preset that has to be loaded via the channel rack. It is supposed to be played as an instrument, so you cannot just load it into the mixer channel that has your vocal connected to it. No, you have to load this via the channel rack, and then you have to load the vocal into the plugin itself. But this is actually very, very easy, because all you have to do is go over here to this tab, which is called Map. And over here you see a SliceX. And it's also named Load Your Sample here. And it will always load up on the left top corner, so it cannot get lost within the rest of the plugins. And all you have to do is open it up, then
I'm broken down, trying to pick up the pieces.
drag your vocal into it like that, and then just hit this button over here, which is called the auto slicing button. And what SliceX does is create all these small little vocal chops for you, so you don't have to do it manually. And that's all you have to do within SliceX, because there are a lot of controls here which are controlled by knobs inside the patcher preset. So it's best if you don't touch anything else, and just close it down and go back to sample control. And as soon as you've done that, you can go to the piano roll from the patcher, and it will look like this, because FL Studio automatically loads in all these small little vocal samples into your piano roll. You can just go ahead and delete all of this, because yeah, we're not gonna use that, because we can basically create our own rhythm, whatever you want. And the good thing about this is with the standard settings of ChopIt, it might already sound pretty much like a screech. So let's have a look. So as you can hear, it actually already sounds pretty good with the standard settings. I didn't touch anything else right now. And that's the great thing. You can now have leave it like this basically, or you can go ahead, dive into the preset and see what sounds you can create out of it. But of course, this is a walkthrough, so let me guide you through everything. As I said before, this is where you start with the sample control, and I try to make everything in this preset as self-explanatory as possible. So as soon as you see a knob, it is labeled with what it does. I labeled it with the levels as well, so you kind of understand intuitively already what's going on and what you're going to do. But I will just guide you through a few things that are interesting to create cool sounds. So if we start over here, of course you can see the input gain. You can reduce this if you want to give yourself a little bit more headroom for applying the other effects, and then bring the volume back with the mastering. The pitch is actually something that can create really interesting sounds. Let me show you. And that's something you just have to play around with and see what fits to your song, to your track, whatever project you're working on. And the same actually goes for the format. It creates really nice, interesting effects as well. Like I said, just turn every knob in here and see what it does to your sound. If you like a certain setting, you can just save the preset or even render it out so you have that version stuck, and you can always revert back to it basically. Now the resonance mix and the resonance level kind of speak for itself. The fade in over here is a fade in for the resonance. So if I move it up, the resonance actually comes in later in the sample. It's a very minimal effect, but it can make everything just a little bit more smoother. And the same you can do with smoothing over here. Let me show you what these do. That makes it very sharp and almost a little bit clicky. And if you just leave it at 100%, you have a little bit more of a smooth fade in into the sample. And the sample length, as the name already says, you can set the length of each and every note. Then we have an LFO. Could be interesting as well to apply or even create an automation clip on these two and have some effects going on in your drop. Then we have a filter. Low cut and high cut, so it basically works as a bandpass filter. And this could be interesting as well to shape the frequencies a little bit. This one is standard set at I think 200 Hertz. So you have a low cut at 200 Hertz, nothing comes below. Because you kind of don't want that information into your screech. Then you have the bypass button, so if you don't want the filter at all, simply tick it on and there's no filter applied. Speaks for itself. And then the extra resonance over here, you can basically see as a peak inside an equalizer, and you can turn it on and then find a frequency that suits your vocal sample. So it's a nice way to give your vocal sample a little bit more character. So the next section is basically where the magic happens, because as I said before, this is this distortion section and you have control over 3 different types of distortion. If I bypass all of them, let's see what it sounds like. As you can hear, it sounds like there's pretty much nothing happening at all. So this is really where you can set the tone and the feeling of your vocal screech. And these are in chronological order. So you start off with the burner, which is the mildest of them all basically. This will run through the destroyer, and then these two together go through the killer, and the killer is the heavier. heaviest distortion. And because everything is in chronological order, you have a lot of control of how it's going to sound. So if I'm going to bypass the destroyer and the killer, we can now very detailed listen to what the burner is doing, set the parameters in the way you want, and then go on to the destroyer. You even have the option to put this one a little bit harsher as well. Over here, just scroll through 2. If you want to leave it at mild, just leave it at 1. So let's say this, you already want this very intense, then this is going to be the result. And as you can see, you can also choose to leave this one out and just turn on the destroyer and the killer, and then you just bypass this and nothing from this section will be affecting the sound. Yeah, and then the same goes for the destroyer, where you actually have 2 types of this, destroying your sample, a big one and a medium one. You can turn these on separately if you don't want the big destroyer to do anything at all. Just turn it all the way down. Same goes for the medium. And like I said before, this is just something you have to play around with again and see what works for your sample. And the last one is a killer, and this one is a little bit more basic, but you have 3 settings over here: the knife, the gun, and the bomb. And the knife is the mildest of the 3, so to say, and the bomb is the heaviest. And then you can blend in the amount with this knob over here. The next tab we see is the multiband compressor, and this section you can basically approach as an OTT, for example. At the top you have parameters for the crossover. So right now the crossover between the low and the mid bands is at 200 Hertz, and the crossover between the mid and the highs is at 3000 Hertz. You can change these settings if you want, but yeah, in general these are kind of the standard approaches for low, mid, and high. And then you can compress them separately, and here basically speaks for itself. If you want a little bit more bright, compress it a little bit, increase the output gain. If you don't want any lows, just turn down the lows output gain all the way down. If you want the mids to be compressed a little bit more, yeah, you have basically all the options that you have with regular multiband compressions as well. Next up we see the Sidechain tab. And yeah, this is pretty self-explanatory again, I think. You have the option between 7 different types of sidechaining, and all the way on the left it's the softest sidechaining, and if you run really hard sidechaining, you set it to ultra, but I in most cases leave it to the normal, and then you can blend the sidechaining effect in with this knob over here. The following section is the effects section, where you can apply both delay and reverb, and you have quite detailed control over both. You can also bypass them both if you want a completely dry signal and apply your own effects in the mixer channel, for example. But for the delay, you have the option to leave it at mono, or switch to stereo or even ping pong delay, and then blend it in with the time, the wet level, and the mix. And then you have the option to sidechain the delay. And what is meant with this is that you can sidechain the delay to the original signal. So as soon as the screech itself, the vocal screech itself is playing, the delay is ducking. It's a very common effect, I think we all know it. And you can do it separately for the delay and the reverb. And at the standard settings, they're ducking with a few dB, so the signal should come through pretty clean. And then over here we have the reverb, where you have control over the mix, the decay and the size, the wet level, low cut, high cut, and the width of the reverb. If you want it very wide, put it into stereo. If you want it very centered, just turn it down to mono. And then the last section we have over here is the master, where you have control over compression and limiting. And the master compressor can be used, for example, to blend in the effects with the original signal, or you can just squash together the whole screech sound basically, but that's just up to you, whatever you want. Right now with the basic settings, it is just a slight compression that catches a few of the peaks. And then over here we have the limiting, and this makes sure that your sound is not clipping, although I do have a slight increase of the gain here, but that's simply because the output gain of the SliceX is by default quite low. It's not so loud, so to make up for that I moved this up by a few dB, so you have a little bit of a louder output, so you hear what you're doing a little bit better. And that's basically it for all these different sections. And just a quick note, the last tab behind the master is a how it works tab. And here I just briefly explained how you can get to the end result. So which steps do you have to take to get a vocal screech. And as you can see, for a more detailed overview, you can always check back to this video on my YouTube channel. But if you really have problems and you really cannot figure it out, you can always send me an email to galactormusic@gmail.com and I will assist you and make sure the plugin works to its full potential. Now in the end, I just want to give a few quick notes, because you might ask yourself, what do I need to run this patcher preset? Well, the good thing is all you need is the most basic version of the paid versions from FL Studio, which is the producer edition. That's also the one that I have. So I only use plugins that you get with that one, and you will have it in the other editions, of course, as well. I'm not sure if this works on the FL Studio's demo version. But yeah, that's something you have to check for yourself. I think most of us have at least a producer edition anyways. So then you can just run it, except for 3 plugins. These are external, but they're all free, so you don't have to spend anything on external plugins. The first one is the Melda Productions free FX bundle, which you need for the M auto pitch and the M compressor in the end. Then you need Distortion 2 and Disto FX. And I will leave a link to all these plugins to download them below in the description as well, so you don't have to worry about that. And just make sure you install the latest versions, then it's gonna work for sure. And to show you that it's not only working with female vocals, by the way, I will also show you that it's working with a male vocal like this.
All the freaks in the crowd, all the freaks.
It's already auto sliced. Now we go back here. Let's dive into the piano roll. So as you can see, it also works with male vocals. I tried it with a lot of different vocals, and I always got a nice little screech sounds that I can use in my mid intros and other drops. So yeah, it allows you to be so creative, and it has endless possibilities to create really cool effects and really cool sounds. So there we go. That was it for this video. I hope it was a clear explanation and that you now understand what ChopIt is capable of doing and what it's best used for. You can download this patcher preset with the link down below in the description. It comes with the project file of the song that I showed you in the beginning as well, and of course with the patcher preset itself. And then I want to say thank you so much for watching. Hope you guys liked it, and see you in the next video.
Roll.